Welcome to North Carolina Innovators and Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Aaron Gard, the Executive Director of the Institute for Innovation at the UNC School of Law. Today I have my friend, UNC Law alum Bert Diener with us. Bert, welcome.
Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. So we're here to talk about a lot of interesting stuff. We want to start with you, your background and what you do. Not only are you an entrepreneur, but you're working on innovative things with relation to your firm and how to build your business.
Right.
So let's start with just who you are, how you ended up at UNC Law.
Right. Yeah. So I graduated in '03. I was in the Marine Corps before then, so I ended up in North Carolina, and graduated in '03 and went to basically kind of work a couple jobs, a couple different legal jobs, and just trying to find my niche. Eventually, I settled on opening my own law firm, and probably one of these people that just needs to work for themselves. Mm-hmm. But over that period of time, when you kind of engaged in law, you start to figure out there's limitations in terms of what you can do if it's just by yourself or just with smaller resources. So you have to try to figure out how to get leverage and how to, whether it's compete in litigation or have influence. You'd have to play the game. So I became very interested in terms of how to grow our influence and grow our position in different, let's just say, practice areas. And so then we were just kind of off to the races.
So what did you focus on? What practice area did you end up focusing on?
So we ended up, I ended up falling in love with the immigrant community. Mm-hmm. So our primary practice area in the firms that I own are immigration, but we do personal injury and workers' compensation, and I personally had a federal practice. I did stuff in federal courts as well, and kind of a little bit of everything, but that's where I settled. That's where my heart's at. Yeah.
So it takes a lot of courage to hang up your own shingle,
right,
and go out there on your own. Having myself worked at firms, I thought about folks who do that kind of work. I'm like, I don't know how they do that. That takes
right.
a lot of courage. So how did you muster up the understanding that you could do that and succeed, right, as opposed to kind of wanting to go work for someone else who's taking more risk? Because it's risky going out on your own.
Yeah, it is. I think that ultimately, and if you're going to open up your own firm, you got to be able to wear several different hats. And so how comfortable are you in trying to understand how to get clients? Mm-hmm. How comfortable are you trying to build an ability to produce work beyond yourself? How comfortable are you with actually trying to make sure that you make enough money to pay everybody? Right. So if you're talking about client generation, you talk about profit model. How do you manage other people as well? Mm-hmm. If you can wear all four hats and figure out a way of how to scale those, then because you're going to have to face it one way or the other. So maybe I wasn't very smart and I just thought I could do it and I didn't realize the challenges. But over time you figure it out.
So along the way, how have you been able to adjust and innovate,
right,
to grow your business? Where have you seen opportunities that you've been able to take advantage of and maybe change along the way to kind of continue to grow a successful firm?
Yeah, so I think that one of the main things in terms of, like, you have, let's say you take large firms, you have medium-sized firms and small firms. Mm-hmm. I don't think my firm is pretty much in the small category. We're probably pretty solidly in the middle size firm out there. We got several hundred people that work in the firm, so we have a lot of moving pieces. So
we've kind of started to get into where you're going with your firm.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about private equity.
Sure.
And you hear a lot about private equity these days. We're both sports fans.
Right.
Private equity folks are starting to get into that game, whether it's the PGA Tour, professional soccer. We were talking about that before we came on air.
Absolutely.
Where they see opportunity and growth and dollars, mm-hmm, they want to get involved.
Right.
The legal world's a little tricky in that respect.
Right.
Accounting has been tricky in the past too. For the PE is starting to get into that space a little
right.
bit. Talk a little bit about kind of the barriers in the legal world, but how folks like Arizona, for example, something just happened in the Supreme Court. That's kind of, folks are starting to poke around and
sure.
see what the opportunities are in the legal world. Talk a little bit about that and your experience and what you're looking into.
Absolutely. So, if I actually brought this back to, let's say, 2003 when I first started, right, we were pretty much at that point in time really kind of getting into online systems. A lot of computer, at that point in time, most everybody had paper files. And then there was this transition, you get to paperless. And so people's willingness to start to embrace the technology changes at that point starts giving you opportunities to lay a foundation for how you can potentially scale, right? How you can be more efficient, how you can provide better customer service, how you don't have to have somebody who's ultra skilled to do every role. You can find people that can specialize in smaller pieces. So in this like 20-year plus, kind of time frame, in terms of starting to adapt to technology, and not think of law as it used to be, but what it's becoming, kind of leads us to where we are today, right? So in the process of kind of working in law, we developed certain assets. One of them was technology, and we ended up creating a company that basically built systems for law firms around the country. And so we took something we did, and now once we had a team, the resources, our access to brain power was significantly increased. We did the same thing on the marketing side. You have to get clients. Most of us don't have reoccurring revenue. And so you have to try to, once you build a team or you have an individual, if that person leaves, you have to start over again. So we decided to try to invest in building a company that could do this for ourselves, and then now we basically do it for multiple firms around the country there as well. We actually took that and we took because most of my clients are Spanish speakers and we were having difficulty filling seats, at one point I just said, look, if people are outsourced into India, why couldn't we outsource to a Spanish-speaking country? And so 10 years ago, we set up shop in Mexico, and we have 2 offices there, and we help other people do the very same thing, basically find talent, and we actually train them. There's not an American paralegal system in Mexico, but we actually have a situation where we'll take people and we'll train them step by step so they can perform more advanced roles. And so when you take the combination of all of those, what we've basically done is we've taken something that was a strength, we leveraged it so it would get better. It turns around and it serves us, and that's allowed us to scale. Now, what that has to do with where we're currently at is the fact that we're kind of at this crossroads with law, and it may sound kind of like cliche, but it's really true. And what the crossroads is that primarily law is a protected profession, right? It's not a monopoly. We're fragmented, but we do have this barrier to entry. As a being in this kind of this sheltered environment, law firms haven't had to adapt as quickly to technology. They haven't had to adapt in terms of the competitive environments. If other people are trying to get the cases, how much money do they have to potentially do it? Even access to talent. You could get by with certain talent that doesn't have to compare with let's say other industries. And so now that you have potential private equity or people are willing to pour money into it, and you have AI, what you're really doing is that you're taking, it really kind of comes down to one point. It still comes down to money. As lawyers, we want to take care of our clients, but people make decisions based on whether it's going to improve profitability or reduce cost. And so private equity and AI are both coming into the picture to try to answer one of those 2 questions. And so whether it's a small firm, a medium firm, or a large firm, wherever they see the opportunity to generate more profit, they will invite, whether it's private equity, or private equity is usually linked with AI, or a solution, and they try to bring it in there to try to create some type of economies of scale or some type of efficiencies so it expands. And so we're in this point right now where, much like other industries like accounting or dental, in the dental space, there was a prohibition. There were protected industries as well. There was a prohibition that non-accountants or non-dentists could own those. But they found a way around through generally kind of managed service organizations. So managed service organizations, like in the dental space, they may call them a dental support organization. But they have different structures that what they can do is they can bring in assets and systems and experts to leverage the part of the practice that doesn't involve delivering the actual medical or legal service. But they get all the benefit from the expertise from this other aspect, and they find ways that are consistent with the law to make sure that everybody gets paid. So where we're at right now, and although most lawyers that are looking at it, or people that are considering becoming lawyers, they're looking at it, they're thinking AI is going to take over. And it's not going to take over from a standpoint of like a robot replacing all of us. It's not going to do that. I mean, people hire lawyers to see how close to the line they can get without getting in trouble, right? A computer doesn't do that. A computer basically will give you information, but they're not artists. and lawyers need to be artists, and that's where the value is there. But from an AI perspective and a private equity perspective, is that there's going to be competition in terms of how you get clients. And so just as an example, just this week, on the 25th, the state of Washington Supreme Court approved a pilot program that they're still trying to define that's going to allow for non-attorney basically profit sharing. Arizona has a model, they call them alternative business structures, ABS, and this was borrowed from England when they basically allowed non-attorneys to basically combine businesses with law firms. You have Utah that had what they call the sandbox, a very similar situation where they approved and they allowed those individuals, those law firms, to share revenues with non-law firm entities. And then there's even Washington, D.C., that allows, if you have an administrator of a law firm that's basically running the business side, they're able to receive a portion of profit. So you have 4 of 51 jurisdictions. You could say that maybe Puerto Rico would be 52 or something like that, but 4 of those 51, so you're talking about almost 8% of the U.S. Jurisdictions are allowing some form or fashion non-attorney ownership or profit sharing to come into the picture now. So we know it's a matter of time that it will progressively, whether it's like the cannabis industry, like it'll slowly start to gain muster once you have enough pressure on the Supreme Court or state legislators. But these private equity organizations and or AI, because it's 6 of one, half a dozen other, who's offering that service, they're going to want a piece of the action from either how you get the clients, how you optimize your staff, how do you actually get the work done, or even from a structure, or just from a profit perspective of how you maximize profit. So, this is being driven by money, and so you just have to understand what runs a firm and how it's going to step in, and that's how it's coming together.
It's fascinating stuff. In Europe, sometimes law firms and accounting firms are combined.
Right.
So is that akin to what you're talking about?
Yeah. So KPMG in Arizona was the first accounting firm that was given this alternative business structure, at least that I'm aware of, right? This is a very opaque situation. Not everybody's sharing everything. I hear a lot of things behind closed doors, right, or what people have heard or they understand that you're wondering if that's legal or not, but it's just, this is kind of the Wild West.
Well, that's what innovators do, right? You talked about pushing the boundaries,
absolutely,
getting into a gray area.
Absolutely.
And you're well positioned as an attorney because you know what the rules and regulations are, but you also have this outside the box mindset, which
absolutely,
a lot of lawyers and accountants don't have.
That's right.
So that you're in a really good space.
Absolutely. I feel like, I'm glad that I'm in this situation. It keeps things very interesting. There's nothing mundane about this. But like KPMG, they want to get their law license so they could potentially offer tax advice in the state of Arizona to do that. So when I looked up and even asked ChatGPT, what are they doing? What can they find out there? And they're talking about bringing efficiencies to the back office and all the things that I kind of talked about. So the game is probably going to be the same. Either people are going to help you get clients and they want a piece of the action, or they're going to try to make you more efficient and more profitable from the back end, and they want a piece of the action. So if you look at it from those two aspects and what that means for the future, what I would argue for everybody who's potentially watching this or may kind of catch wind of this information is that lawyers and law firms are going to fall in one of two categories. They're either going to be players or they're going to be spectators. And the legal industry, we tend to be laggards, right? We tend to be slow adopters by our nature, risk adverse. We like, consistency. But at the end of the day, I think everybody needs to kind of like keep their eyes open, their ears open, and identifying what solutions are coming available, because you're either going to adopt and maintain your ability to stay profitable and take care of your clients and take care of your team, or you're going to slowly be cooked. And how fast that's going to happen, we don't know. As more jurisdictions come on board and more people find ways to structure profit sharing with non-attorneys, the faster it's going to come to fruition. So we have entered kind of that space in our own, like legal support organization capacity, where we have multiple aspects of what we can do with a firm. So we're already doing it with firms, and trying to model ourselves after the dental industry. And what does this look like? But I'm of the mindset that if it's coming, we might as well be part of it. We might as well kind of be a leader in this and see what works. And let's find out for ourselves where we can take this.
That's great. So do you look at yourself, we started talking about your immigration interest, and that's how you started your firm.
Right.
Do you look at yourself as having built an immigration practice or more of a technology company? It sounds like you really built a technology company, and you're figuring the best way to leverage this. How do you look at your firm and what you've created?
So I mean, which is a really good question, because I'd say there might be like a third option here. And so what I think that what we've done is we've built an ecosystem, right? Because we have this tendency, like when we graduated law school, and we were told, you try to get the best job you can, you're a great lawyer, if you're a great lawyer, you'll be taken care of. But the truth is that the business of law is far more complicated than that, right? And especially with the competition and the pressure, downward pressure on fees, the other myriad of issues that are potentially out there, you ultimately have to build a team, and everybody has to be skilled at these aspects that have to be addressed. You don't have a choice, or you will become irrelevant. So from a standpoint in terms of myself, building an ecosystem that can support the opportunities coming ahead and taking advantage of those and taking care of the people who are either our clients or our partners, this is where it really is business. I mean, this is total business, and you have to find this way that there can be a win-win-win situation. The unfortunate thing is that people look at this and they get nervous and they think, oh, this is win-lose, I'm going to lose. That's only if you're passive. It's only if you're a spectator. If you're a player, you can find a way to leverage, whether it's technology, whether it's working abroad, whether it's new relationships and opportunities, and you can craft situations that everybody continues to benefit. And then that's where I think survival really comes from, is if you have enough smart people together, you can figure out anything.
This is great. So last thing, we've covered a lot, fascinating stuff. I always like to try and think about the conversation we're having and how our students can benefit from it. So you've taken your law degree, and I see you've really used it as a tool. You've gotten into all sorts of various things, not just practicing law.
Right.
Talk a little bit about how your degree, how you've leveraged it, how you see it as this useful tool that's helped you build this wonderful thing that you're building, this ecosystem.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great opportunity if people have an open mind at this point. So when people think about lawyers, they watch TV and they watch TV shows and they think that's law, and that's an aspect of it. But that being said, if this next generation that's coming up, I mean, they've grown up in social media. They understand the power of telling stories, of getting out in front of other people. They understand that relationships, like this generation, the most recent generation, what is it? These are, what do they call it? Generation.
I'm not sure.
I don't know. Sure. Whatever the most recent generation, it shows how out of touch we are. But this most recent generation, a lot of the staff members that people hire from the attorneys that we work with, they'll say that they're not as motivated by money. That they want more connection with other individuals. It's really more about lifestyle. And so people that are coming up that want to be lawyers now, you have a perspective on what life is like now, what it takes people to be happy. And so if you understand law as being one mechanism that you're trying to help people, but if you understand the rest of the equation, the rest of reality, you're far more powerful. You're far more influential. Because, I mean, it really does, it's not just about the law, it's how what people need and your ability to take care of them, whether it's the client, whether it's that individual. I mean, to give you an example, a few months ago, we hired a therapist in our firm. And the therapist's job is just to check in with everybody and see how they're doing. And if they need to talk, great. And if they don't, but sometimes what goes on in people's heads that stays in their heads, and it makes everything more difficult. How do you keep a healthy environment? And so these are the type of things that I think that new lawyers, if you're coming into it, don't think of, don't be boxed in. What can we do to take care of clients at a higher level? What can we do to help more people? And what can we do with the people that are helping us do that? What can we do to help them? And then you have to be creative and find a way that everybody wins in that. And so that kind of all win, that problem solving, that creative attitude, the spirit of that, and don't let yourself be boxed in, let yourself dream. The sky is the limit, because there's the legacy lawyers out there, the lawyers that are thinking the old way. I mean, this is your competitive advantage, is that you're closer to reality in the world, the way the world really works right now, than they are, and you need to capitalize on it.
That's great. We'll end on that. What I hear you saying is leverage the degree, be open, challenge yourself.
Absolutely.
Try new things.
Right.
Things are changing through technology. You're leveraging that. You're not afraid of it.
Right.
And you're using your ability to think and problem solve, which you learned at UNC School of
Absolutely,
Law.
absolutely.
Great, great. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for your time. We appreciate it,
No.
and look forward to the next episode.
Thank you.